My name is Adrienne Kessler. I'm 34 years old, a former combat medic with the 173rd Airborne. I've treated soldiers with collapsed lungs, stitched wounds under mortar fire, and carried the dead across desert heat so they could go home whole, even if only in body. None of that prepared me for the day my own mother stood up in a courtroom, pointed at my chest, and said I didn't deserve to wear my medal. It wasn't her words that cut deepest, it was the silence after. The silence of the judge who said nothing, the bailiff who looked away, the sister who smirked like she'd already won, and the room full of strangers nodding without knowing a damn thing about me. So I reached up and unpinned the Medal of Honor, placed it gently on the table beside the mic, like I was laying something sacred to rest. The room held its breath, but I didn't flinch. I'd already learned sometimes silence is the only armor that doesn't crack. They thought that moment broke me. But they were wrong. I wasn't there to beg or explain. I wasn't there to make them understand. I was there to wait. For the one moment that changes everything, not with volume, but with truth. And that moment was already walking through the courthouse door. Before you hear the whole story behind that moment, if you've ever been abandoned, hurt by your own family, and still forced to smile through it, leave a comment. I'm not telling this to complain, but because maybe somewhere you've felt what I felt. Now, let me take you back to where it all truly began. The last time I stood in front of that house, the porch light was off, even though the sun hadn't set. It was the kind of detail you'd miss if you didn't know the place. But I knew every creak in the floorboards, every rust-stained corner of the brick steps. That house raised me, then forgot I existed. They called me back from duty when my father had what they said was a minor stroke. I flew in from Fort Campbell, still in my ACU's boots crusted with Afghan dirt. No one met me at the airport. No one called to say thank you for dropping everything and coming. No one unlocked the front door when I knocked. I had to use the key I'd kept in my sock drawer since I was 19. Inside, the air was stale, like nothing had moved in weeks. My father was in his usual chair, slouched, but conscious, the TV still on a channel he never watched. I knelt next to him, called his name. He didn't speak, just blinked twice. I took his hand. He didn't pull away. I checked his pulse, felt his breath. It was shallow, but steady. He was still in there. No one else came out. Not my mother, not my sister. I unpacked in the guest room and made coffee that first night in silence. It wasn't new. Silence in that house had always meant more than words. It was how we punished, how we passed judgment, how we disappeared each other. Over the next few days, I took over his meds, cleaned out the fridge, sat through his breathing treatments. No one offered help. Rebecca was in LA, handling a seminar according to a 2-word text. My mother stayed upstairs. I heard the shower run. I heard her phone calls. But I never heard my name. I didn't ask why. I just kept showing up. Every morning at 6:00 a.m., I checked his vitals and made toast. Every night I sat by his room flashlight on my lap, waiting for his breathing to shift. 3 weeks passed before he finally whispered, "You came back." Just that. Nothing more. But I held on to those words like they were a lifeline, because sometimes when you've been erased long enough, even a whisper feels like resurrection. The courtroom had no windows, just fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly above, and a thermostat set low enough to feel like punishment. My dress blues were crisp, my boots polished, but none of it mattered. I could feel the sweat at the base of my neck cooling too fast. Nerves, maybe. Or maybe just the kind of cold you recognize from being unwelcome. Rebecca sat at the plaintiff's table shoulder to shoulder with our mother, like they were co-counsel in a performance they'd been rehearsing for months. They didn't look at me, not once, not even when the bailiff called my name. "Adrienne Kessler, please approach the stand." I rose slowly. Every step echoed each one a reminder I didn't belong in their version of this story. My heels struck the marble floor like rifle bursts, too loud in a room so eager for me to shrink. I made it to the stand, raised my hand. But before I could swear in, my mother shot up from her seat. "That medal," she barked, voice, trembling but loud. "She doesn't deserve to wear that." The air pulled tight. Even the judge looked startled. A pause hung like dust in sunlight. Rebecca didn't move. She only leaned forward, slightly, curled one lip and said, "She's not a real soldier. That medal's a PR stunt." The judge cleared his throat but didn't speak. The bailiff shifted his weight. No one stopped them, so I did what none of them expected. I reached up, unpinned the Medal of Honor from my chest, and laid it gently on the wood beside the mic. No reaction, no words. Just that sound, the soft clink of metal against surface, and then the silence that followed. That silence used to shame me. But not today. Today it meant I had nothing left to prove. Rebecca's attorney rose as if cued by the moment, all smooth confidence and cologne. He started weaving a narrative with selective photos and clipped phrasing. Adrienne Kessler had returned home uninvited, he claimed, overrode medical decisions, inserted herself into estate matters, manipulated her father during a vulnerable time. He projected a photo me holding my father's hand in the hospital. Another one me unlocking the old shed in the backyard. They framed it like trespass, like control. I didn't look away. I'd been told by my court-appointed lawyer not to speak until we had something irrefutable. So I stayed silent while the world around me repainted my life in ugly, dishonest brushstrokes. No one in the room knew what that house smelled like at 200 a.m. when he couldn't breathe. No one saw the tremor in his hand that stilled only when I held it. No one cared about the dust in my lungs from sweeping out mold that summer. And maybe that's what made it worse. It wasn't just betrayal. It was being forgotten on purpose. On the second day of the hearing, Rebecca wore black again. A sleek, high-neck dress with sleeves just long enough to look appropriately mournful, but not so modest as to miss the cameras. She kept one arm wrapped gently around our mother's shoulder, like she was the grieving daughter in a made-for-TV movie. I watched it all from my seat and said nothing. Then she stood. "Your Honor," she said with rehearsed poise, "I'd like to submit a short video into the record. It was recorded the night before my father passed, captured by the hallway security camera." My attorney didn't object. He didn't even look surprised. The judge nodded. The screen came alive with static. Then a grainy hallway shot dim lighting familiar walls, a door I knew too well. And then there I was pixelated, but unmistakably, me standing outside my father's bedroom. "You never respected me." My voice echoed from the speakers, sharp, emotional. "All I ever did was try." A pause. Then his voice faint but audible. "You disrespected the family name." "You never wanted a daughter," I shot back. "You wanted a soldier to parade around. And look what you became," he snapped. Then silence. A beat. And finally, my voice again cracked and angry. "Maybe I became what you made me." The screen went dark. No context, no next frame, no sound of the door opening again. No footage of me kneeling at his bedside afterward, telling him I didn't mean it, that I was sorry, that I stayed not for pride, but for love. None of that made it into Rebecca's curated cut. The courtroom shifted. I heard murmurs behind me. A woman tisked softly. Someone cleared their throat too loudly. My mother pulled a tissue from her clutch, with a mechanical precision, and dabbed at a tear that didn't fall. The judge turned to me. "Miss Kessler, would you like to respond?" I rose, walked to the mic. For a moment, I considered explaining everything. The fight, the reconciliation, the way his hand clutched mine just an hour later, when he whispered, "I was too hard on you." But when I looked at Rebecca, she was already smiling, just slightly, not for the room, just for me. I turned to the judge and said, "No response, Your Honor." My lawyer leaned in as I sat. "We could cross-examine the footage," he whispered. I shook my head. They wanted me to flinch. They wanted me to perform. But I wasn't on trial to earn their version of the truth. I had already lived mine, and sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's restraint. The judge had begun to speak. His voice was even measured, the kind that signaled the beginning of a conclusion no one could stop. He shuffled the papers before him and tapped them once against the bench, an unconscious gesture, but every soldier in the room recognized it. A closing ritual. My throat tightened, not from fear, not even from anger, but from the hollow certainty that I was about to be erased, again. And then, the door opened. Not loudly, just a soft creak, almost apologetic. Heads turned, but no one moved. Not at first. It was the kind of entrance that didn't need noise to demand attention. The man who stepped through wasn't in a suit. He didn't wear a tie or carry a briefcase. He wore a full military dress uniform, pressed to perfection, adorned with ribbons and medals that spanned decades of service. Silver hair cropped close, posture like a steel rod, presence like a storm waiting for permission to speak. General Raymond Hartwell. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. But I knew. Everyone knew. Even the judge paused mid-sentence, blinking like he was recalibrating. The courtroom shifted. You could feel it in the air, the way people straightened their backs, the way whispers died mid-breath. My mother's lips parted. Rebecca's face went a shade paler. The general walked to the center of the room, uninvited and unbothered. He turned to the judge and said, "Sir, if I may." The judge, stunned, just nodded. He turned toward the room. "I won't take long. I'm here because she doesn't need to prove anything. I'm the one she saved." Silence fell like snow, heavy, clean, undeniable. He looked at me, not through me, and then turned to the rest of the court. "I was trapped in an ambush outside Marcha," he said. "Convoy disabled. Communications down. Half my men dead. I had a shrapnel wound in my back and a broken leg." He paused. The weight of memory was in his breath, and through the smoke she came, 18 years old, dragging another soldier over her shoulder, bullet in her thigh, rifle slung on her back. I closed my eyes just for a second. The heat, the blood, the sand in my teeth. "She refused to leave me," he said. "I told her to go. I begged her to save herself. She just said, 'You're not dead yet, sir. Let's keep it that way.' And she carried me." A sound escaped someone in the gallery, a choked breath, maybe a gasp. He turned to the judge. "Whatever story they've built around her, I need this court to understand I owe my life to her. That's not opinion. That's history." Then he looked at me and saluted. Not a courtesy nod, not a polite gesture. A formal salute, every muscle precise. Public, earned. And for the first time since the trial began, I let myself breathe. Because honor, when spoken by someone who remembers, doesn't need defense. It just needs to be witnessed. General Hartwell didn't sit down. He stood firm at the center of the courtroom, like a monument no one had planned for. Then, from inside his coat, he pulled out a sealed folder. Thick. Official. The kind with government markings along the edge. He held it up steady in one gloved hand. "This," he said, "is the original Medal of Honor nomination packet, filed 7 years ago. Not by me, not by the unit." He paused and looked directly at me. "It was filed by Colonel Thomas Kessler." My breath caught. My father. For a moment, the whole courtroom seemed to lean forward. The judge blinked slowly. The clerk hesitated, waiting for instruction. Rebecca stiffened like her spine had turned to glass. General Hartwell unfolded the flap and pulled out a document, heavy stock paper, with a blue and gold seal in the corner. He turned it, held it toward the judge. And at the bottom, in unmistakable ink, was my father's signature. Not forged, not copied, signed. My knees didn't buckle, but something inside me shifted like a beam that had been holding too much weight for too long, had finally cracked. He had believed me. All that time. All those years of silence, and he had carried this truth in a drawer somewhere while I stood alone under judgment. The general spoke again. "Colonel Kessler submitted this nomination through a classified channel. He asked for discretion, said he didn't want Washington turning her into a symbol before she was ready, said she needed time-space." My chest tightened. He hadn't erased me. He had tried to protect me, but in doing so, he'd let me stand in shadows I didn't deserve. The judge gestured for the clerk to collect the file. She walked gently, like crossing sacred ground, and took it from the general's hands, as if receiving a folded flag. I kept my eyes on that folder, not on Rebecca, not on my mother, just that folder. Because it wasn't just paperwork, it was proof of something my father had never said, but once believed that I was worth honoring. Rebecca's voice broke the moment. "There's no proof it's authentic," she snapped. "It could be fake, just another story." General Hartwell turned to her slowly. His voice clipped but firm. "This packet is logged in the Department of Defense Archive at Fort Belvoir. You can verify the reference number. Dated, witnessed, filed. There's nothing fake about it." Rebecca said nothing after that. Neither did I. Because some truths don't need defenders. They only need daylight. And for the first time in years, mine had found the sun. The courtroom hadn't even begun to recover from the shock when another voice broke the silence. "Your Honor," the clerk said barely above a whisper, "there's a subpoenaed witness waiting in the hall." The judge looked confused. "Now, yes, ma'am. She says it can't wait." The doors opened again, but this time there was no uniform, no fanfare. Just a woman in a charcoal gray coat and low heels, clutching a worn purse like it held her conscience. Her shoulders were hunched, and her eyes avoided everyone's gaze, But I knew who she was the second I saw her. Danielle Holloway, my father's private nurse, the one who vanished after the funeral without a word. She walked forward step by step, as if crossing some personal battlefield. When she reached the stand, her voice trembled. "My name is Danielle Holloway. I was Colonel Kessler's nurse for the last 4 months of his life." She cleared her throat. "And I need to tell the truth now, because I haven't been able to sleep since the day he died." No one moved, no one dared. She reached into her purse and took out a small flash drive, setting it gently on the evidence table. "I deleted the original copy of his in-room video recording," she said, "because I was paid to." The courtroom inhaled as one. My mother blinked, but Rebecca flinched. "She offered me $25,000, Danielle said, eyes locked on my sister now. To wipe the footage? To make sure his final words wouldn't change the outcome." Rebecca's chair creaked as she sat back, face suddenly unreadable. "But I made a copy," Danielle continued, "and I kept it. Because even though I took the check, I never cashed it. It's still sitting in a drawer because I knew it was blood money." She handed the drive to the clerk. "The video matches the one you've seen, but it's longer. It's the full version." She turned to the judge. "He said the house should go to Adrienne, not out of inheritance, but because she carried him. He said, 'She held me when I couldn't breathe. She stayed. She didn't ask. She just stayed.'" Danielle's hands were trembling now. "I didn't come here to be forgiven. I came because the truth deserves to stand, even when we're ashamed of where we stood before it." Rebecca stood. "She's lying. She's trying to cover her own tracks." Danielle didn't blink. "I don't want anything. Not a dollar. I just want my conscience back." The judge raised a hand. "That's enough." No one said a word after that. Because what could you say when the lie collapses under its own weight? And for the first time, Rebecca had no script left. The judge recessed for 30 minutes to weigh the implications, but we all knew what was coming. No one left their seats, not even Rebecca. She sat rigid, blinking hard, like she could still will this into another ending. When the gavel struck again, it was soft, almost ceremonial. In light of new evidence and testimony, the judge said the video declaration of Colonel Kessler shall stand as legal directive. The property remains with Miss Adrienne Kessler. I didn't smile, didn't cry. I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, the same way I had when they took the medal off my chest. Only this time they couldn't take anything from me. Behind me a man stood. I hadn't noticed him before, an older veteran, ball cap in hand, white stubble on his chin. He placed his hand over his heart and nodded. Another person stood beside him, then another. A silent salute. It wasn't for the medal. It wasn't even for the court's ruling. It was for the choice to stay upright in a room that tried to erase me. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed. Reporters called my name. Cameras flashed. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My silence had done enough. Rebecca stood by the curb, already reciting her version of the truth to a microphone. "I never lied," she said calmly. "I just made sure our father's legacy wasn't tainted by confusion. I protected what mattered." They let her talk, let her spin, but the world had already seen enough. I stepped into the waiting car. General Hartwell was seated beside me, hands folded, gaze forward. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he said he didn't know how to say it out loud. "But he believed in you." I nodded. "I know," I whispered. It didn't erase the silence. It didn't undo the years of doubt. But it did something else. It gave shape to what I'd always carried, the quiet truth that never asked for applause. Later that week, I returned to the house. I didn't walk in like a victor. I walked in like someone ready to rebuild not just walls and hinges, but memory, meaning, and a place I could live in without having to defend every inch of it. I didn't hang the medal. I placed it in the drawer beside a photo of my father, not in uniform, but laughing in the backyard with sawdust on his hands. Because some honors aren't meant for display. They're meant to be remembered.